Hi everybody, and I'm Shola Kay, and I want to welcome you to this panel discussion on why won't women apply. I'm the moderator today, and I'm a public speaking coach and a communication coach for the tech industry. And I want to go straight to our panelists so we can hear from them. So let's start with Julia, please.
Hi there, my name's Julia Harrison. I'm a head of product at Government Digital Service. I've been there for just over 18 months, and before that had a variety of roles, mostly in the commercial sector.
Thanks, Julia. And now on to Devon.
Hi there, my name's Devon Edwards-Joseph. So I'm just about to start working as a senior analytics engineer at Spotify, and prior to that I was working at a private members club called Soho House, also in data engineering.
Thanks, Devon. And now on to Tripta.
Hi everyone, my name's Tripta Kershaw and I'm a Director of Product Management. I've been in IT since graduating with a degree in IT for over 20 years, and I currently work for a supply chain technology company called Kerber Supply Chain.
And last but not least, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Murison. I'm a head of user experience and design at the BBC, working in a team of about 200 designers. I've been there for about 18 years, and I'm just about to change jobs to be design director for a small agency in Manchester.
Thanks very much. And as you all know out there, you've got the questions in the chat facility available to you, and the panel are very open to answering your questions. So please do get them coming in, and then we can move to your questions a little bit later on. But the first thing I want to ask all of you is really, you've been on both sides of the recruiting table. You've been trying to hire women, and also of course you've been applying for positions. So I'd love to start with you, Julia. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned in the past from roles that you've been in, and what you think works, and why women sometimes don't apply for these tech jobs?
I asked some friends of mine this question because I wanted to get a range of views other than my own, and the person that I said, I want to quote you on that, and this is the most common thing that I hear, is if I don't meet every one of their criteria about 5 times over. And that seems to be the thing, is you get these big shopping lists of criteria, and people just don't apply unless they feel like they meet all of them. And personally, I tend to read a job ad on 2 levels. I read, what does it tell me about what they're looking for? And what does it tell me about how they are and their own levels of self-awareness, for example, within the company? If you're asking for a massive long shopping list, it tells me that either I'm never going to be qualified for this, but I also question, is anyone qualified for this? And does that mean you're hiring people who have really low levels of self-awareness as to what they're good at and what they're not, and do I want to work there? So yeah, I tend to look at these things on 2 levels, really.
Thank you. And Jane, what do you think about that? How about yourself at the BBC?
I completely agree with that. And I think that one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, especially in the context of changing jobs, is kind of applying that to my own practice, because I think that most jobs aren't going to be a perfect match to the skills that you have as a human woman. So it's probably if you have to give yourself the chance to talk to the company about what they actually want. They probably have a sort of vague idea about what they're looking for, and hopefully they're open and minded enough that what they've written isn't exactly what they're looking for anyway. They have to write something in a job description. They're thinking about making it sound attractive, but you know, they'll have a shopping list of things, and not everything on it is an absolute must-have. I think we've got to cut ourselves a break and think about giving ourselves a chance to see if they're more open-minded than we might be giving them credit for. I know that at the BBC, when we write job descriptions and when we put these things together, we've got quite a lot of specifics that we have to get in there, because we've got kind of quite well-defined processes, but it doesn't necessarily allow you to talk as much like a human as you'd like to. So I'm very hopeful people just applying anyway, giving it a shot, and then letting us kind of have a chat and find out what they're really like.
Thanks, Jane. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I often hear that the ideal number of points on the spec is maybe 5, and then that's few enough that people feel that they can go forward and apply, but to cut it down to 5 points is going to be terribly difficult for most employers. So Devon, how about yourself? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I would agree with what everyone said about the kind of long laundry list of requirements. That's off-putting, probably for anyone, but I think especially if you're not kind of the traditional, you don't fit the traditional mold for that particular job. I think that the other thing that occurs to me as well is that it's about that awareness of what jobs are out there and who is actually hiring. If you're not kind of within that network already, you might not even know that the jobs are there. So my previous job, the one I just left, I only found out about that because I'm part of a group that's called the Black Young Professionals Network. And they actually sent me the job and said, look, this looks like it would fit your skills. Why didn't you apply? But I never would have come across it otherwise. I just wasn't in the right place. I wasn't looking for it. So there's an element of kind of needing to get the jobs out there, I think, to the people as well, for them to even be in a position to apply in the first place. So I think that's definitely a factor.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, isn't it? And you often get a lot of well-meaning employers that say, oh, well, tell all your friends and then we'll get someone else just like you. But what that ends up doing is it obviously makes the pool of applicants very, very similar. Tripta, how about yourself?
So my own experience, personal experience, was when I decided to take a change in my career and go from a head of portfolio role to a director role, and I was really ready for the challenge. So I was looking for progression in a job description and also work-life balance, having spent 3 years commuting on the M62. So I found myself, when applying for jobs, looking at the requirements and then weighing up whether or not I could do the actual job, or whether I could actually demonstrate experience that allowed them, my interviewers to feel, yeah, she's got the right skill set. So I found some of what I was doing was very much around a list and working through that list to try and demonstrate where I'd had the experience. And then there was also a criteria to have 8 years experience in product management, whereas I only had 3, but I had 20 years in IT. So weighing that up, I decided to apply for the role. I'm also running a recruitment campaign now at Kerber Supply Chain. So again, I'm also, when I'm writing JDs and looking at keywords, I'm using, words that will encourage women to apply for the roles, using things like, coaching and mentoring, working alongside myself. I've put myself out there on LinkedIn so they can see who they'll be working with, and, hopefully that creates some confidence around, going for these roles as well. So, for me, it was a bit of requirements, but then also understanding the culture of the company, team working, various words and indications around what the company was about were really important to me as well. And again, things I include when I'm advertising for recruitment roles as well.
Thanks, Tripta. And another thing that I think is quite interesting, especially when you're trying to attract a diverse slate of candidates, is the keywords and phrases that appeal to the sort of people that you're trying to bring in. So if any of you had any experiences with what you should put on these job specs that is really welcoming to women and is bringing them forward as applicants. So Jane, I see your hand go up there.
Yeah, we did this with the BBC user experience design job family a few years ago, and reviewed all of our job descriptions, looking specifically if we felt like the language had been kind of, if it was more sort of gendered than we were intending. I think we were would never intentionally go in with this, so it's not like we're saying anything really overt, but it's about how you're describing the role and kind of exactly what sort of qualities you're kind of professing to want. So to put it in really cartoony terms, you're avoiding things like thrusting, hardworking, sort of things like that, which feel really masculine, but also potentially they're suggesting that someone, that we value presenteeism, for example. We're looking for people that are going to work really long hours, or we're looking for people that are going to be quite aggressive or assertive. I think those are the sort of things that we were initially looking at as being kind of potentially quite off-putting. I think there's some more obvious stuff which I found myself looking for, and I think that we also looked at as a department, which is thinking about whether or not this role could be made flexible how you can do that? Does it have to be full time? Are you able to support people that have got caring responsibilities at potentially different stages of life? And sort of adding some of that stuff in, rather than just assuming that everything has to be full time, I think has made a big difference. So we did see a change in the types of applicants that we were getting as a result of doing that. But it does feel like the basics to me. It's like you do that to get them in the door, and then there's a question about what's the selection process that you take them through as well. So once you've actually successfully started changing the makeup of your candidate list, are you still filtering it in the same ways you were before? Are you being open-minded in the way that you're thinking about it? All these things can make a big difference to who actually ends up getting into the team.
Thanks, Jane. And interesting, you talked about flexible working there, because the benefits make a difference too, don't they? So have any of you had any experience with, aside from technical flexible working, experience with other benefits that people, you find that women are particularly attracted to?
I think flexible working is definitely the big one, even though my children are a lot older and at university. Being able to just switch off in the evening and have the weekends with the family, it kind of indicates that you're working for a company who really appreciate the family and the culture around it. So that was something I was looking for in the jobs that I applied for, and certainly things that I mentioned in terms of what we stand for, in terms of the team and the recruitment that I drive forward. So definitely, and also, with this year, I think having some travel and spending time with teams is something that I've personally found quite appealing as well. So although I didn't want to do my long commute, I did want to work with global teams and meet teams from different cultures and spend time with them, just to get some energy and some excitement around the work we're doing. So there were a couple of things: collaboration, helping others, things that we've also included in our careers website as well.
Thanks, Tripta. Julia.
I think one of the things that we're thinking about gendered things, so we tend to think about flexibility that women often need because we tend to take the burden of caring responsibilities. And the number one thing that comes up, which is a reason why people leave jobs, and the number one thing that people say they want to see more of in job ads, is be transparent about pay. We're motivated the same as everyone else. We want to know what you're going to pay us. And especially if you have a lot of responsibilities outside of your day job, you don't have time to be filling in a job application that takes 45 minutes or an hour or 3 hours or whatever it is, if somebody's not going to tell you what the pay is up front. So I think there's also just a level of, we're asking you to invest time in applying for this. The very least we can do is tell you what you might expect to get at the end of it if you go through this process. So that was a big thing that came up. The other thing I think that's really important is you're not just talking to somebody about what's going to be their job, you're talking to someone about what's going to be their life. And if you talk about a life which is entirely office centric, so hey, we have a great social scene, we have beer and pool tables and all these amazing things, what you're doing is you're selling somebody a life that is always in the office. And if you do that, you're going to attract people who want that life, and you are going to exclude people who want a life outside of the office. I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind when you write a job ad, especially if I work in the civil service, so our job ads don't tend to be those kinds of things. But if you're in an organisation where you lean really heavily on what your culture is like, bear in mind talking only about your work culture and not talking about flexibility to actually have some home time as well sends a very strong signal.
Excellent point, Julia. That's really interesting. And I've got a couple of questions here, so we'll branch off for those for just a moment, and then we'll come back to the questions that we've got on our agenda. But Vera has asked, what happens if you get asked about a requirement or a skill that you don't have in an interview? So perhaps Devon, what has that ever happened to you in the past, and what has been your recourse?
Yeah, definitely. So I studied anthropology at university. I didn't study computer science, so I didn't have that kind of traditional technical background. And certainly when I was kind of first looking to get into more technical work, I didn't have everything on the list that they were looking for. So I think in my experience, it's always best to be very honest about that. There's no point lying or kind of fluffing your way through an answer. You can be very honest about the fact that you don't know that thing, but you're very kind of happy to learn about it. You're keen to learn. That's why you're taking that job. So I think the enthusiasm counts for a lot. And you don't necessarily need to kind of cover up those gaps. You can be very upfront about them, but also discuss what you're going to do to fill them. And I think that, at least in my experience, they would rather have someone that is enthusiastic, curious, really does want to learn, rather than someone that maybe ticks all the boxes, but kind of, maybe isn't interested in learning anything else. They kind of know what they do and that's that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing at all, would be my answer.
Thanks, Devon. On to Jane.
Yeah, it's a similar point. I think recently I've been applying for a job and I don't have very much commercial experience, or at least not recently, because I've been at the BBC in a public service job for the last 18 years. My new job will have some commercial parts to it. So when they were asking me about that, I was, had to think quite hard about it and think about how I was going to do the job interview. And one of the things I thought about is, well, if I don't have this, what's the thing that I can offer that I can talk about? So yeah, like Devon was saying, being really honest is important, and feeling authentic and like you're not pretending to be something you're not, but being confident that you can offer something to the role and what that's going to be. So in my case, no, I haven't done a lot of commercial work, but I have done lots of procurement. So I've been on the other side of the table a lot. So being able to talk about that and the experience that brings was the way that I could get through it. And I think that's really important to understand, is we're not pretending to be something we're not. We're just going in, saying what it is that we can offer and feeling confident about that.
Yeah. Julia.
This wouldn't work for something like a programming language, but I think as well, if you're being asked for like a technique or something that has a specific name and you're from out of that domain and the terminology might be different, I think it's also fine to ask, so I understand what you mean, can you give me an example of a problem that might solve? And then even if you don't have that skill, you can talk about how you'd approach the problem, which might be, that might be 80% of what they're looking for anyway. I can't speak for every interviewer, but if I had a candidate do that with me in an interview, I would, first off, I'd give them points for the way they phrase the question back to me. And also I would be interested in finding out, okay, if you don't know this thing and have never done it before, how would you solve that problem?
Yeah, excellent point. And I was working with somebody just yesterday on some interview skills coaching, someone in the tech industry, and basically you're there to sell yourself and to sell the skills that you've got. So instead of looking at it from this negative approach that, oh, I don't have this, what do you have instead? What can you bring to the table that they may have thought, oh, we don't need that, and then you discuss that you've got it and they're like, well, we must hire you. So it's really about putting your best foot forward, really, and saying, I've got this, I'm here in the interview, let me just get it out there and then see what the response is, rather than being afraid. Okay, great. So we do have another question. So let's ask this and we'll go back again to the agenda. So this question comes from Nicole, and she says, how do you find the balance between keeping the requirements list shorter on the job spec, but then also ensuring that you don't receive an influx of CVs of people who are not suitably qualified? Tough question. So I'll ask, let's see, Tripta.
So I think this year, with everything that's going on, we have seen a number of applicants, a big number of applicants applying for our roles. We have applicants applying from Europe. So we are going through every CV. The job descriptions have been written around some experience in supply chain technology, a degree. We've referenced a degree to try and filter out anyone who probably isn't suitable for the role. And then I am going through every single CV just to make sure that I give people the opportunity for an interview. So that is taking up a lot of my time. But, again, the balance is difficult, certainly, I think, with roles this year, probably more so than any other year. Definitely, there's myself, our HR managers are also involved. So again, balancing is around us, a team of us reviewing those CVs as well where possible. And then also we offer, the website where again, we're giving more information about the company and the role as well. So as much information as possible through various social forums. We use LinkedIn as well for posts to, hopefully save time for applicants as well if they're not suitable.
Thanks, Tripta. And it is harder work, isn't it? I've got some clients who are looking to increase the diversity of their employee base. And when you say, well, you've got to go a bit beyond your regular sources, you can see the people sort of, oh, this means more work for me. But the benefits of having that additional diversity obviously are huge. So that work needs to be done, perhaps at the front end, but then later on, then that becomes a new channel, and it becomes much easier to find more women or more minorities. Anyone else got something to add on that one? Jane?
Yeah, we're very fortunate at the BBC because of our brand, that we often have an oversupply of applicants to the number of roles that we have. For example, in our graduate trainee scheme that we run in design, we've ended up with about 900 applicants for about 5 positions this year. So in situations like that, it's very challenging. And I think the difficulty for us as hiring managers is that it's so much easier to end up leaning on your unconscious biases when you've got that kind of problem. So being really aware of those and thinking about how you're filtering. So exactly what you were saying, Shola, yes, you have to invest more time. You have to accept that you're going to be investing more time, but also looking at the selection processes that you can use so you're not filtering the wrong candidates. So we were finding, for example, that sort of gladiatorial interview situation wasn't necessarily going to work for every type of person. It ends up potentially favouring people that are more extroverted, more able to kind of tap dance in the moment rather than prep beforehand. So we try and use a real range of different approaches to assess people. In some cases, we use group workshops or peer assessments as part of the package and get people to do some stuff up front as well. And all of those can help sort of allow different strengths to shine. So if you've got different type, hopefully that sort of increases the diversity of people that are coming into the organisation.
Thank you, Jane. And I've got this other question that's coming, which is an interesting one, which is from Emma. It says, have you ever stated on a job advert that you welcome applications from women? If so, do you think it had an impact? And just recently I was looking at LinkedIn and I saw a post there from somebody in HR that said that when you put on an application, we are an equal opportunities employer, or we welcome applications from a diverse range of people, she was saying that actually the applications from minorities went down because people don't want to be seen as tokens. So I'd be quite interested to hear if you have any views around that. Let's go to Devon first, and then we'll go to Tripta and then Julia.
It's an interesting one, because when you said that, my first thought was that if that were true, you wouldn't necessarily need to say it. It would be apparent, through the behaviour of the organisation and the kind of people that work there now. But I suppose everyone has to start somewhere. So it's an interesting one. I was thinking, what would I think about that? I think that to say that you'd welcome them from women, I think, is a strange one, because I would wonder what's the alternative. Maybe you didn't before or something like that. But I think you can probably. I think with a lot of these things, like behavior speaks volumes, you can show this through doing rather than saying. And I think it does, maybe that's not fair, but it rings true to some extent that if you have to say it, maybe you're not quite there yet. So yeah, I'd probably think more about where you're kind of putting those job ads and what you're demonstrating that shows that that's true, rather than just putting it as a line in an application. But I'm very interested to hear what everyone else thinks about that one, actually.
Thanks, Devon. Tripta, what do you think about that?
So I haven't specifically said, applicants welcome from women. I've referenced graduates for some of the roles. And I was quite surprised, actually, that I still had applicants from anyone who was interested in the role, not just graduates. I tend to use words like flexible, remote working, and to try and encourage women to apply. And again, I mentioned earlier that I also put myself out there. So every time we post jobs, I also share them, or the HR manager will mention me in early interview calls as well. It is an interesting question, but I haven't specifically asked for women, because I just hope, I want to again be diverse and encourage a lot of people who feel that they want the role and they want the challenge to apply as well.
Thanks, Tripta. And then Julia and Jane.
It reminds me a little bit of the thing that happened with panel shows on TV a while back. And when you get one woman on a panel show, she's the woman on a panel show. When you get two women on a panel show, they start bouncing off each other and it's actually funny. I mean, not to say one woman on a panel show isn't funny, but two women on a panel show is much, much better. And it's the same in a team. If you're the first person who looks and sounds like you on your team, and everybody else kind of sounds and looks the same but different to you, that's really hard work. And yeah, it's tricky. You have to start somewhere. The thing I would say is if you are bringing somebody in who is the first person not to look like the rest of the team, you have to make sure they are supported. You have to make sure, find them a network, find them some people who no matter how tough and resilient you are, it's tiring. It really is. So yeah, you need to bring those people in, but you need to make sure they're supported as well. And regards to the diversity statement, yeah, I would be very suspicious of anybody who said we welcome applications from women. I would worry a lot if my employer wanted me to put that on a job ad. The one about equal opportunities employer always just sounds like the legal department have asked for it. If people who are routinely discriminated against find it a turn off, then I would take that data and yeah, I would pay attention to that, to be quite honest.
Thank you. We've got 5 minutes left, so we'll come to Jane quickly for that one. I saw your hand up, and then there's one more comment I've got in the chat here, which I'd like to share with you. So Jane.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was just, it's fine. You can carry on with that comment if you like.
Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. All right then. So Jonathan has said, have you ever put on a job description, we are not expecting any applicants to have all the skills shown on this description. And in fact, we encourage applications from candidates who do not have all the skills listed here. So have you ever done that and said, well, we've got 10 things we're looking for, but if you've got 6, it's okay.
Sorry, do you want to go there?
Yeah. Sorry,
okay, we'll go to Tripta and then we'll go to Jane.
Sorry, I was just going to mention, actually, it's quite an interesting question because I did put out a role for a product owner, and it was a junior product owner, and we were, hoping that graduates from a particular science background would apply because the solution itself is quite complex and you need to be really good at maths. So there was a lot of desirable requirements as opposed to essential requirements, and then really a statement around who would be the ideal candidate. So that's the technique I used, and we also put it out to universities, and interestingly, no graduates applied, which was probably, yeah, so I think that was probably down to the fact that they didn't quite understand what a product owner was, because everything we put down was essentially, having experience and a degree, but not necessarily having done the job. I think that also put people off as well. So it's tricky to balance. I find when I put JDs out there, I tend to review them after a while, and then I may tweak them, following conversations with HR.
Great, thanks Tripta. We've just got a couple of minutes left, so just carrying on. Jonathan said that he did this on a job description 7 months ago and they got an excellent diverse applicant set, so that's quite interesting. But I'd love to, Jane, I know you had something to say, and then we'll just very quickly wrap up. Everybody I think is available on the platform, so if you do have any specific questions for our panelists, then please do let them know. We've got 1 minute and 30 seconds left, so Jane, a quick comment and then we'll wrap up, please.
Yeah, just a quick one to say, while we've got the oversupply in some areas where we've got more specialist positions, we suffer from this exact thing. And what we've done in the past is say, these are desirable but not necessary. I think actually that specific wording might be better because I think it's more encouraging. So I think it's a really good idea. Just wanted to say that, really.
Thank you. So desirable but not necessary is the one of the takeaways.
I think saying you don't need to have all of these to apply is
absolutely
better. That's more clear than just desirable.
Oh, I see. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. So is there anyone who's got a last burning comment to share? No? Well, I want to thank all of you for sharing your wisdom today. And as I mentioned, all of you are available on the platform. So please, if you do want to get in touch with any of our panelists, please drop them a question. But thank you so much for listening in today. And thank you to all our panelists for being here. Much appreciated.